South Korea is scheduled to host an early election on June 3rd, and the new leader needs to hit the ground running amid a host of diplomatic and defense priorities. We have more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Tuesday, April 29th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Now today we touch upon partisan preparations ahead of the June 3rd presidential election and the pending tasks ahead, especially on the security front as well. For more on this, I have Yang Chien-Hao, a freelance journalist from Taiwan, based here in Seoul currently. Chien-Hao, welcome back.
Hello, good to be here.
I also have Professor Kim Jae-chun at Sogang University joining our talk virtually with the pundit's take on today's topic. Professor Kim, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Yang Chien-Hao, we will start here in the studio. Let's begin with the result of the Democratic Party's primary that was shared back on Sunday.
Yes, so the former party leader Lee Jae-myung has won the nomination on landslide as the official president candidate of the Democratic Party, which was not a surprising result. And nearly 3 years ago, we saw that Lee Jae-myung lost to Yoon Suk-yeol by a margin of just 0.7%. Now it will be his second time running for the president. And according to the various polls in South Korea in these several weeks, if it's in a multi-candidate race, Lee Jae-myung maintains a commanding lead over his rivals from the Conservative, with support ranging from 40% to 50%. And the latest Gallup poll published last Friday showed that in a head-to-head matchup, Lee Jae-myung also secures about 52% support. And other Conservative candidates, when facing Lee, trail by a margin of 10 to 15 percentage points. And it appears that Lee Jae-myung is in the strong position to win the election easily, but the Democratic Party still needs to find ways to maximize the support across the Korean society. That's because a significant number of voters here still have doubts about Mr. Lee. Some even dislike him outright on his, for example, judicial risks, on his social welfare policy, having cash handouts, on his diplomatic routes, on his strongman leadership style in the Democratic Party. He and the party itself will need to convince people accepting him more.
Right. And Chien-Hao, what's the latest with regard to the primary at the People Power Party?
So just 1 hour before our program went on air, the People Power Party has just held the second round of its primary election. And out of the 4 candidates, 2 of them will enter into the third round of the competition. We just got the result that the former Minister of Justice and party leader Han Dong-hoon and the former Minister of Employment and Labor Kim Moon-soo have been confirmed to enter into the third round. However, there is still a major variable at the play. As I've covered the National Assembly recently, there are unofficial rumors indicating that the acting president Han Duck-soo is very likely to resign and run the election as non-party candidate in the coming days. And if you look at various polls recently, Han Duck-soo receives the highest rate among the Conservative candidates, though still having the gap with Lee Jae-myung. If Han Duck-soo really decides to run for the president too, then the final candidate from the People Power Party will need to consider to unify or to integrate with Han Duck-soo in order to maximize the vote. But the problem is Prime Minister of being the only Prime Minister of President Yoon's short term, many people suggest that Prime Minister Han should take his political responsibility, as also Democratic Party is criticizing on Han's action of nominating the new constitutional judges by himself. And the National Assembly Research Service and many law professors are claiming that it is unconstitutional. So Han's controversial actions these several weeks might make him might make it difficult for him to gain the support from the liberal, from the progressive, and even the centrist voters in the future.
Right, so I suppose we'll know for sure in May then. Professor Kim, now speaking purely as a scholar, with all political inclinations aside, what do you suggest as a strategy for the Democratic Party in the upcoming election, and why?
Well, as Chien-Hao just mentioned, the Democratic Party, the leader there, Lee Jae-myung, is leading the poll by a significant margin. Now we have about a month left going into this June election, and many believe, including myself, that Lee Jae-myung's victory is pretty much a foregone conclusion. Unless something dramatic happens, I think his election is very likely. That said, I mean, anything can happen in 1 month, right? I mean, there is a saying that in politics, 1 week is a very long time. So I would probably recommend practicing humility. If you look arrogant, it's quite possible for voters to turn their backs. In addition, you have to be more inclusive and reach out to median voters and conservative voters as well. And this is exactly what Lee Jae-myung has been doing in recent months. So I think he has to keep doing this. On the other hand, though, Lee Jae-myung has been sort of flip-flopping his positions on many policy issues, including foreign policy issues. For instance, he has been critical of the ROK-US-Japan, this trilateral security cooperation. But now he's in support of this trilateral, and he was a bit, can I say, subservient to China, saying that we don't have to meddle into Taiwan Strait affairs, just to say CSA to Chinese and then CSA to Taiwanese. But now he has become a strong advocate of the United States, and all of a sudden he's quite critical of China. So there is a bit of credibility issue at stake here. So I would probably recommend maintaining consistency in policy positions, at least from now on. And I think this is very important to build trust and confidence among voters.
Right. That being said, then, Professor Kim, what would you propose as a plan for the People Power Party in this latest presidential race?
I think, for one thing, PPP will have to understand that because of Yoon Suk-yeol's ill-fated decision to declare martial law, South Korea is going through all these troubles and holding this snap presidential election in June this year, which was originally scheduled to take place in 2027. So party will have to admit that Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment by the Constitutional Court was the right decision. I mean, if you keep trying to put the blame on the opposition party and to defend Yoon Suk-yeol, I believe the majority of the voters will turn its back, and which is exactly what's happening in Korean politics right now. On top of that, you really have to present visions, because all PPP is doing right now is Lee Jae-myung bashing. And I think you really have to go beyond Lee Jae-myung bashing and present proactive visions, visions as to how you will reorganize and restructure your party so that you can leave the remnants of pro-Yoon faction behind and then move forward. You really have to present visions as to how you can resuscitate your party and also conservative politics in general, which is in disarray, to say the least.
Right. Chien-Hao, against the backdrop of partisan primaries now, an American weekly news magazine says the U.S. recently prepared South Korea for a potential nuclear attack by North Korea. Could you tell us a bit more about this particular report and, of course, its relevance?
All right, so the Nuclear and Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Agency from the United States Army has conducted the first training session in the Strategic Command facility in Seoul during the mid of April. There are totally 8 South Korean members and another 5 people from the U.S. and Korean Joint War-Fighting Headquarters attend the training. The U.S. Forces Korea emphasized that they are trying to provide necessary knowledge and skills to operate effectively in and through a nuclear environment, making them able to strengthen the deterrence against nuclear armed adversaries. And as you can see now, South Korea's political situation is currently in the transitional phase. And as we are waiting for the upcoming presidential election, and President Trump has taken office in the beginning of this year, at least for now, the United States forces remain vigilant against any potential North Korea provocations and try to show that they are really fully prepared. But based on my personal opinion, I don't think the Pyongyang regime will take any actions before the election, as it could make the impact on the outcome and potentially benefit South Korea's conservatives. So this will be the problem. So I don't think that North Korea will have further actions in these coming weeks.
Right. That being said, then, Professor Kim, what do you suppose are the implications of this latest training session? And do you also agree with Chien-Hao's opinion that North Korea is not likely to engage in any provocations during the 35 days left that we have to the presidential election?
Yeah, I agree with Chien-Hao on the observation that North Koreans would dare to launch provocations in the remaining campaign days. I mean, until the snap election will take place in early June. But that said, I think we really have to stay more alert to North Korean threats. North Korea's nuclear threats have been around for about 3 decades, and there is a sense of frustration and lack of urgency in South Korea. South Korea has become a little desensitized about the kinds of threats threats that North Korea is posing. Sure, we don't really have to panic. We have to stay calm, that's for sure. But that said, now is time to stay more alert, more vigilant. In that respect, latest training sessions that the U.S. conducted with South Korea were very timely, and both countries will have to take these training sessions very seriously. Kim Jong-un has pledged many times that he would keep the country's nuclear weapons capabilities, and North Korea is estimated to have possessed around 50 nuclear warheads, and then continuously working on ICBMs and SLBMs. So there is all the more reason why we will have to stay more alert, and then we'll have to have more training sessions like the ones that we had previously.
Professor Kim, this is an impromptu question, but marking the Trump administration's 100 days in office this week, quite a number of foreign media outlets have claimed that questions about the reliability of the Trump administration as a security partner has reignited debate about the importance, perhaps, of pursuing a nuclear arsenal, especially here in South Korea. Again, speaking purely within your capacity as a scholar, is this a topic that you have heard a number of pundits talking about, the need for South Korea perhaps to pursue its own nuclear weapons arsenal?
Well, personally, I believe that given the geopolitical location of South Korea, external balancing strategy, by which I mean alliance partnership with non-residential power, great power like the United States that doesn't really have territorial ambitions in the region, it is a must. It's not a choice. There's we all know that the U.S. has decreased its presence in the region, particularly with the inauguration of the second Trump administration We worry whether U.S. will be there when South Korea is attacked, say, with North Korea's nuclear weapons. But I guess first thing we need to do is to augment, now the terminology is U.S. Korea, not just U.S. extended deterrence. It's a Korea-U.S. Extended deterrence in the form of what we call CNI, conventional nuclear integration. I think that is working. But I mean, we are talking about Trump administration and very unpredictable president sitting in the White House. So I do understand why many South Koreans are calling for, nuclearization of South Korea. But there are so many downsides that come with nuclearization of South Korea. Of course, there are upsides. Now politicians and some scholars are talking about possessing nuclear latency. I think it's also a bit of a misnomer. But I think we'll have to strengthen our rights to say, enrich uranium for industrial purposes. We are like a top 5 countries in the world that use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes, and we have been a very, very exemplary country in that respect. But we don't, we don't have the right. I mean, we do have the right, but what we do is to import enriched uranium, natural uranium, and then entrust foreign countries to enrich uranium in its entirety. That's a bit absurd. So what we will have to ask for from the United States is to have more of a right to enrich uranium. Actually, it is guaranteed in the ROC-US Atomic Energy Agreement. We are allowed to enrich uranium beyond 20%. But for fear of raising many eyebrows in Washington, D.C., we don't dare to enrich uranium. So I think it is very important for South Korea to start enriching uranium and maybe hopefully reprocess spent nuclear energy. That's what we'll have to ask from the second Trump administration, not really going nuclear right away. There are so many downsides.
Right, I see. So something definitely...
Yeah, right. I hope my answer wasn't too long.
Oh, no, not at all, Professor. Thank you so much for sharing that answer with us. Chien-Hao is also staying on the security front. Now, contrary to initial expectations, the defense cost sharing, it was not included in the latest tariff talks between the U.S. and South Korea. According to one U.S. military newspaper, pundits have warned against linking tariffs and troops, especially the expense of maintaining troops here in South Korea. Could you tell us a bit more about this particular coverage?
Yeah, so we already know that President Trump has shown his very strong desire asking South Korea to share more defense costs. We've seen that during his first term, he demanded that the defense costs raising from the original $0.9 billion to $5 billion every year. And this had somehow triggered a very awkward situation between South Korea and the United States. But, well, thanks to the pandemic, the United States government was extremely busy handling the chaos during 2020 and 2021, and making President Trump himself unable to immediately force South Korea to do so before ending his term. And later, after President Biden took office, the two countries had gone through 8 rounds of negotiations, and then finally a 5-year special measures agreement, so-called SMA, has been made in October last year, with South Korea paying around $1.2 billion in 2026. And it was just 6 weeks before the martial law crisis happened in South Korea. And then President Yoon was finally being impeached in the beginning of this month. So there are indeed some concerns which President Trump might want to make another deal, a new deal again with the current caretaker government, maybe separately or maybe as part of a trade package together. So it will become very controversial if that really happens, because that means the United States is gonna abrogate the agreement which made up last year with the former regime in South Korea, which will lead to a loss of the United States, the U.S. credibility. Furthermore, if it's acting President Han Duck-soo signing up the deal, then it will definitely cause very negative effect for the conservative running the campaign, especially for Mr. Han himself, since the Democratic Party and their supporters will accuse the government of making excessive concessions to the United States.
Staying with this, Professor Kim, what are your prospects with regard to the fate of defense cost sharing between South Korea and the U.S. under the Trump administration? I mean, what do you suppose would be a pragmatic approach to this particular issue between the two countries?
Well, I believe if there is one thing, really one thing that President Trump wants from South Korea, I think that one thing is for South Korea to pay more for stationing of USFK, United States forces in Korea. As Chien-Hao just mentioned, many South Koreans do believe that this isn't really fair because South Korea has continuously increased its financial contributions for troop deployment in recent years. We just concluded last year in November this round of SMA, Special Measures Agreement negotiation. And the outcome of that negotiation is that we will be paying more. I mean, compared to 2025, we will be paying like 8.3% more in 2026, which isn't really an insignificant amount of money. However, it is very likely for President Trump to ask for another round of negotiation. And if that is the case, I don't think South Korea has an option. I mean, we have to comply to their request. I mean, sure, we'll have to explain to the Trump administration why paying more isn't going to really help ROK-US alliance, and paying more is going to fuel anti-American sentiments in South Korea, which is already resurfacing because of all these America first foreign policies and all. But on the other hand, I think we have to think strategically here. I mean, if we have to pay more, we should think about, what we can really demand from the Trump administration in reciprocity. And if the money that we pay more, say that it goes to shipbuilding cooperation between the two countries, I think South Korean shipbuilding companies can benefit. I mean, as long as the money goes to augmenting South Korea's defense and military preparedness, I think paying more is okay. I mean, what I'm trying to say here is that we really have to think strategically here.
Right, for sure, of course. And this demand for greater expenses on defense, it's not a demand that the Trump administration is just making on South Korea. It's one that it's also been making to Taiwan itself. Do you suppose Taiwan and South Korea could perhaps come up with a joint way of addressing this particular...
Oh, sure, definitely, because we have confronting the very same situation that President Trump is asking both South Korea and Taiwan to pay more tariff, and now also Taiwan is trying to raise up its budget, trying to defend with China. And also we need some assistance from the United States, and we buy weapons from the United States, and Trump is also asking us to pay more. And so if we can try to make a deal, I mean, both for Taiwan and South Korea together, trying to fix the problem together, it might be another power to negotiate, more effective power to negotiate with the United States in the future. But that situation has some risks. It's kind of risky because we can imagine that if it's Lee Jae-myung being elected in the coming election, he won't try. We suggest that he won't try to. He will not try to touch the issue of Taiwan. Yeah, so that will be very kind of difficult in the future.
Well, I suppose we'll have to wait and see then. All right, Chien-Hao, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Professor Kim over at Sogang University, thank you very much for taking my impromptu questions as well.
Thank you for having me.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. As always, thank you for watching.